Welcome, dear viewers of Mpuma Kapa in the special broadcast brought to you by Mpuma Kapa Television in collaboration with Amaqhawe Ethu Foundation. This collaboration has been going on for quite some times now, and the feedback that we're getting from the people suggests that they are very happy with the kind of content that we deliver. Basically, this program seeks to highlight the activities of Amaqhawe Ethu in and around Nelson Mandela Bay. Today, dear viewers, we bring you a very, very difficult program, if not painful. It is the case because we're talking about one of our members whose untimely death still has to be explained to the South Africans. He was someone's son. He became somebody's husband and eventually became somebody's father. Today, he is known as someone's victim killed by the poison. Sindile Mfazi was an activist and a founding member of this Congress of the South African Students in the late 70s. When the terrain in the 80s became too limited for his activities and that of his comrades, Sindile skipped the country to join the African National Congress and Umkhonto weSizwe to contribute or taking the politics or pursuing the politics by other means. Tragically and sadly so, some of the very people for whose freedom he fought plotted against him and ultimately poisoned him. We state this with certainty, dear viewers, because the official report confirms this. We salute this cater of the people who used his very last breath pursuing the very cause. It is therefore in the interest of fairness and justice, particularly for his family, that there has to be a meaningful closure in this case. Nanye, as he was known by his friends, was a member of Amaqhawe Ethu Foundation, the very entity whose defined objective is to honor those who lifted more than their fingers to liberate our country. It is in this context, dear viewers, that this case is profoundly significant to the foundation. Today, we have invited Mr. Philasande Dokeni, a former colleague to Lieutenant General Sindile Mfazi. We remember we saw him during ad hoc committee. He is going to share with us the kind of distance we have traveled to unravel the story behind Sindile's murder. I'm yours, Lennox Class, saying welcome, Mr. Dokeni, into the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Namdis Bulisende, just to greet everyone who's watching and enjoying the show. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Dokeni, I'm sure people will place your face somewhere. I don't want to say anything about this until later. But before we begin or dive into the program, people want to know who is this man invading our sitting rooms? You know, what is it that he knows about Sindile, who was our neighbor, who was our comrade, who was our child? Now, I want you to get them to relax by way of telling us, how did you meet with the general and what became of your friendship?
Thank you very much. You are right. I'm perhaps too young to have shared the trenches with the General Mfazi. You know, General was too legendary. But our first encounter, myself and the general, was in 1993. I was a young man. And if you are familiar with the climate of that time, the MK was returning home, and there were still unresolved issues, either internally or externally. And I met General Mfazi when he was known as Upito, and he was commanding a group of MK combatants in Port St. John's. And all that they did for me was to ensure that a 9-year-old boy was not in harm's way. It is this face that saved and ensured that this young boy at the time did not experience any problems. So I remembered his face. I etched it in my mind, and as time came to prove it, we our paths crossed later on in life.
Okay.
Yeah, our paths crossed later on in life. So Pila Sanulo, and I am a writer. Well, I want to call myself a writer, but in a you know, and the reason why I tell stories is because I'm very passionate about the African story. I'm very passionate about Africa telling history correctly and ensuring that we dispel the false narratives that exist in society. So that is who I am, and that is how I met this great giant known to me as General Mfazi.
Wow. Thank you very much, Mr. Dojeni. In fact, I could pick up that there's something about you and the storytelling. If I am to retrace the footsteps and take myself to Parliament, there was that about you, meaning that our viewers today are going to benefit a great deal. There's an African proverb, Mr. Dojeni. It goes along these ways. This way, I might paraphrase it.
Okay.
Sell your drum to your village because you get to keep the money and the sound. So the significance of this basically is to say, if we tell our stories to the young ones, the possibility exists that these will be part of our being for the next generations to come. I pretty much embrace where you are coming from. Now, Mr. Dojeni, let's talk about the story about Sindile Mfazi. First, Mr. Dojeni, I can almost tell how would you characterize the nature of your relationship and how you worked with this person. I want to know if Sindile Mfazi was what he was to you, to almost everybody who was working with him. I'm asking this question because it is clear the person who caused his ultimate death is the person who was working with him. I'm having serious problems to reconcile the two. How can someone who was loved to be killed by one of his own? I've been reading so many stories about his colleagues, how they loved him, how they worked with him. But I can't reconcile this. One of them poisoning him. I can't reconcile. Please make us understand this.
You know, thank you for the question. I'm going to backtrack just a little bit, so that I help you understand and that I give everyone the context. Fast forward from the time I met the general, me being the 9-year-old, I now found myself inside the South African Police Service. I was young. inexperienced, very vocal perhaps. But when I was transferred to the Division of Crime Intelligence, there was a photograph of a man I knew I had met a long time ago. And this was none other than General Mfazi. I remember the very first day I landed at the provincial headquarters. I asked Jill Swichers, who was his secretary at the time, "Hey, Jill, I need to meet the general. Please, Mansiswam, please." Jill arranged, I met the general. And when I entered the general's office, I still remember till today, there was a desk that he had where he'd make notes, but there was this conference room sort of setup where he was watching the news. You could sit on the boardroom table and have this engagement with him. When I walked in, nervous as I was, I got the courage to say, "General Mfaz, you don't know me, but I also don't know you in that sense. But I had to come into this office of yours and ask for myself that, do you remember in 1993 the gesture that you did during a very difficult time to a 9-year-old, and how you put me out of harm's way?" And immediately his memory jogged back and he remembered. And from that day, he took it upon himself to ensure that he imparts onto me a knowledge base that I could refer to whenever I do my work. Now, one thing about General Mfazi, many people will tell you, as you rightfully put it, he was an incredible manager. He was meticulous. He understood his work. He understood the criminal justice system, not just as the South African Police Service as a silo, but how the entire system is interconnected. And one thing that you will find about many managers is that they sometimes struggle to give solutions to real problems. And this was an area that General Mfazi excelled in. And it did not matter whether you were a senior person in the organization or you were a junior person. He valued substance. He valued positive contributions that could actually make a change and a difference in the organization and ultimately in people's lives. Athi kumemfana kithi, kutheni ngoku? Why must we insubordinate the ambitions of this country, and we must put forward your ambitions, And people didn't understand how patriotic he was wanting people to become in the performance of their work, And of course, one way he was very good, but being good sometimes leads you to have confrontation with people that are maybe not as passionate or as good at their work. And he had many confrontations, many confrontations. I remember my very first major meeting where generals were in the room, At the time, General Mfazi was a major general, and the meeting was chaired by a lieutenant general.
He's senior, basically.
Yeah, he's senior people. But because of the nature and the way in which General Mfazi was, he took over that meeting, because he offered solutions to the problems that were being presented at the time. And people will naturally gravitate towards leadership because they see it. So this was the character of General Mfazi at work. He commanded forces, but he was also very secretive, because just to tell you, we drove together for years. I remember we even went to an operation and he never told me we are going to an operation. He didn't tell me that there's going to be a big arrest today. He just said, "Mfanagit, let's go, man. I can see your projects are not working out. Come, Magesian, He takes me to Port Elizabeth and When we arrive there, we are busy having breakfast. He says, "Look, man, and but today there's a big operation mfana kithi. Ungoyiki ke sande, ungabili gwala futhi." You know, so he was a gentleman. You know, he's a great leader. He was a father figure, and one thing that I could never reconcile was how such a man who had been through so much in his life, could also be so forgiving. Because part of the trips that we took, I mean, we interacted with so many people from intelligence. So much so we interacted with people that worked in the security branch, the former party government security branch, people that he was now commanding. And he used to say, "Mfana kithi, understand umsebenzi wabo abantu. They understand their work." Of course, understanding that South Africa had transitioned into a democratic state, he was there to ensure that izinto zenzeka in terms of the law, but he commanded people who were once his oppressors, and I could not fathom and fully understand. But we tata le tolerance and this nerve and this heart to be so forgiving, so welcoming. But I guess that was the man, you know, that was who General was, you know, loved by many, feared by many, you know, at work. And abanye, because umsebenzi was what was at the core. You know, many people don't understand, if I'm to speak honestly and frankly. Many people within the armed forces, whether you are within law enforcement, the military, they fail to understand that is a spiritual calling, because you are dealing with the lives of people. And if you are not passionate, and if you don't have sympathy and empathy when abantu need help, and that's what General Mfazi had, because he took his work so seriously that naxa kwenzeke into erongo in society, he personalized the thing and he made sure that you get to the bottom of this thing and it's solved. And akuzocengwa wena, for that matter, if awuzoyenza, this thing has to be done, you know. So that was the man I got to know, got to love, got to respect. You know,
yeah. No, the way we are brushing or you're painting the general, really, I resonate with it, because I've known Sindile for about 47 years.
Wow.
His first encounter with the people that he ended up commanding, the security branch, he was with me when he was arrested.
Wow.
We were at the meeting somewhere in Port Elizabeth together with about 10 other guys. When the place of Nkanunu, Utatu Nkanunu, was raided, we're all there. We had this surprise, you know. We were undertaking a particular operation at the time. So we converged at this house and were to move from there, advance to the place where the operation was to take place. And within 2 minutes into the house, the place was surrounded by the security branch police. I'm sure you will know people used to be called Tungata, ruler of Snifford, like the people he ended up. The point I'm trying to bring here is, even at the time, Sindile was given an opportunity to manage these people. At no point he raised that, because this is what they did. This is what they did the whole night. The panel beat us like there was no tomorrow. But this is the kind of, and one thing he used to hate from the beginning of time was what he referred to as contractual obligation. When I start work at 6 and I finish at 2.
Exactly.
He will ask you, but you are not employed for that. You are employed here to undertake a particular task. This thing that we gave to you. Because he used to hate that. This is Sindile I knew. This is Sindile I know. This is Sindile that I know so many of my colleagues still embraces today. Now, Mr. Tocheni, tell me, the kind of wisdom that the general left, I'm wondering if the vision is still being pursued by the law enforcement branch in South Africa. Are the people still following that vision and that wisdom?
Look, at the time that I had worked with the General Mfazi, there was an obvious effort and an initiative which sought to transform what was known as the South African Police, SAP, which still used strategies and tactics of the apartheid days. I mean, today, you'll see that these guys, Ketoba, they are still using YouTube, they are still using all these tactics to actually torture people, which are strategies and tactics from the days of apartheid. Now, the effort from senior management, particularly that period when I had worked with the General Mfazi, was to how do you capacitate an organization such as the South African Police Service to transition and from that era of getting information to actually reach an era where, one, you are operating within a democratic society. And at the center of that transformation was the role of crime intelligence, the role of intelligence. And that is what he was building at the core of it. Because Dr. Buza, a simple question which he used to always ask me, Ati, when you see a police buggy patrolling in a particular street at a particular time, what informs that? Because we expect that policemen must be so well versed with crime that they know where it takes place, when it takes place, how it takes place. But someone must have informed that police van to be there, because crime and shifts and moves based on the way people move, what is available, and so forth. So if you have a capable intelligence that informs and advises policing, you are going to have a capable force, which is what brought about the term intelligence-led policing. Intelligence, it does not mean that manually phones abantu kuphela. No, that's not it. Intelligence simply means you've learned from history. If you know that a Hillbroom Zegelo between 10 ebusuku to 12 ebusuku, that's a problematic area, abantu get robbed, then use that historical information to inform your deployment. Simple, So gcwalisa amapolisa during that period so that you are able to deal with it. So at the center of transforming the SAPS and all law enforcement agencies was this idea that you should capacitate your intelligence structure so that you are able to really deal with the crime situation in South Africa. General Mfazi was at the forefront of this. And this meant that you needed to embrace technology. It needed that you need to embrace and bring up and capacitate young, capable people, both male and female, which is where I was fitting in because he was seeing this young chap. Nam, this is Zamela, there and there, but you still needed to capacitate me so that I had the technical skills and the ability to communicate as to decision makers. Because ultimately, nobody ground forces, they have all the information. If this information is not filtering to the decision makers, the generals, then no one is doing anything about it. You know?
Exactly.
And when you watch Imadlanga, you realize that when they talk to the senior people, whether you had gone to parliament or gone to Madlanga, when they talk to the senior people, it seems as if there is a divide or there is a gap between what senior managers know and what the junior members actually know. You see?
The foot soldiers, basically.
The foot soldiers, you see? To an extent, as in foot soldiers, zazi too much, and in actual fact, they are not the decision makers. So there needs to be that reduction of a divide between those who take decisions and those who are then performing the work on the ground. I suppose in a way, if you listened to testimony of General Mkhwanazi himself, he did acknowledge that majority of the work that he was presenting was actually done by and brought to him and communicated by Aba Bantu. So you need Ujanam Fazi was that. Ujanam Fazi embodied this capable manager that can feel the heartbeat of the ground forces, and then take decisions based on that understanding, generals.
Yes. No. One thing for sure. General Mfazi used to embody the concept that suggests it is nice to be important, but it is more important to be nice. Exactly. He was so powerful. He was known by so many people, but his humble nature will surprise you. You will find him in the corner, sitting with these guys who are selling loose cigarettes. He's not working. He's saying, I'm part of you. You are part of me. That's him. You go to the township where he comes from. He's mixing with everybody. You will never see him in suits every day, meeting those that think they are connected. He was the people's person. But now, let's just go for a quick break. And then when we come back, we want to retrace the footsteps and take you to Parliament. Don't change that channel. We will be back in the next coming few seconds. Please stay tuned. Welcome back, dear viewers of Mpuma Kapa, in this second and the last segment. We are engaging Utata Uphilasande Dotyeni. He was a colleague of Lieutenant General Sindile Mfazi, a member of Amaqhawe Ethu Foundation, the General of the South African Police Service, a cadre of Umkhonto weSizwe, a member of Congress of the South African Students. Literally, this man gave it all to make sure that we live the kind of lives we are leading today. Welcome back, Mr. Dotyeni.
Thank you very much.
Now, remember, before we took the break, we said we're going to retrace our footsteps to that fateful day when we took the South Africa by surprise. You said things that very few people dare to say. Let's find out why that route. Why did you decide to do what you did?
I would be lying if I didn't acknowledge that Dampupu General
Okay. Okay.
on the 21st of January 2024.
Welcome to the group. A
Hey,
group of people who've been dreaming, General.
hey,
We've been doing the same. Perhaps it explains why we continue to talk about the General. We've been dreaming about this man. Now take us through to your dream.
uyafika kubo uthi awu ndoda
Mm.
nawe nasande uzothula, you know. I wake up that morning and ndingayihoyi this thing. The following day, the 22nd, I dream ingathi the wife and the kids, specifically the wife, ingathi I had arrived endlini kuye and qumbile nomsindo, you know. So I said to my wife, no, I need to do something about this. Unfortunately, there had been a colleague of ours, Uraj Gounden, who had retired as well, and this was bothering him, you know. And he said, we need to do something, Chief. We can't let. He referred to Janam Fazi as the boss. He said, we can't let this thing about the boss. This thing is not on, you know. So when the ad hoc committee was allowing for
A representation, basically. Yes.
representation, I said, you know, if there's one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to study those terms of reference. I'm going to find the loophole, the opportunity, because of everything that I've heard in South Africa spoken. South Africa is missing the story of a general who I believe was among the best this country has ever seen. And if South Africa does not get an opportunity to discover this man, as I had the opportunity, so besimfeile sonke. And therefore, I deposed an affidavit, which was structured so that it appeals to the terms of reference of that committee. But deep down, I knew in my heart, I was there to say only one thing. And that in my training in law enforcement, and when I say this, I speak freely so that whoever has done any law enforcement training, or if you've handled emergency situations, you know when someone calls a mayday, if you had been proceeding north,
distress call, basically.
a distress signal, if you had been proceeding north and the radio comes on and the person says that this is a mayday call, the protocol and the rules of engagement dictate that you drop everything that you were doing for the sake of that one life. And I felt, what is the biggest platform in terms of the South African context and its democracy if we cannot accept that the flaws of parliament indeed find that expression, that a parliament, if we are to speak truly of ourselves, none as South Africans, parliament is the one place where all South Africans are represented. So from the flaws of parliament, Nati, I need to make this distress signal because bengafanelanga ba kuthuleka iminyaka emingaka. It can't be right. And so I go to parliament and the figure paya, and I must, you know when you find yourself in that boardroom and everyone is there, they do their level best to try and make you feel at ease. Even the evidence leaders, they'll do their best. DT la evidence leader andifuna uthetha ngam ngase ndiqale ndithi this is the radio kwangoku ndifikayo. Because no, I know you're a storyteller, I want you to build up the climax, but Nandi, I could not contain myself.
You were ready, basically.
I was ready. And I bottled emotion eninzi, so much so that it needed to explode, and I wanted South Africa on live television to hear the words General Mfazi, because kudala silindile, kudala hoping that people are going to mention that name. And bazolibiza eligama because it is a very powerful name. And thank God they allowed that we speak on the floors of Parliament. And we say the name so that it echoes into history. Uba, on such and such a day, on the floors of Parliament, a Mayday call was done for General Mfazi. And that Mayday call was a clarion call to everyone to say justice needs to be done for this man. Because we enjoy the fruits of freedom, because people like him bled for this country. And what was most painful to me was living in a society that accepts a false narrative. Into yobuxoki, you know, akho nto ibibuhlungu ngaleyo, that the country accepted obubuxoki, you know, that this man had died of COVID, when in actual fact people knew that was a lie. And it needed courage. That andaziva man, and I was so emotional, you know, because kwabuya zonke izinto that had happened over the years during the day, on that specific day. I mean, a lot of things. I was overwhelmed. You know?
Yes.
And ndabulela nje uba that opportunity be presented, because it gave birth to so many voices that felt that bebengakwazi uthetha, you know. And I will forever be grateful. Although when I look at it, there could have been so many voices, far more better people than me, you know. But I said to Kandi Pumapaya Parliament, ndanza a short prayer to myself to say, I hope, General, that at least I've done into Ngalendleli right, because at no given point is it written anywhere that izinto zihamba wrong, when things in the world go wrong, uyazi uba that one will do this, that one will do this. Most of the time, especially when there are moments of chaos, as we found ourselves in the past 5 years, you don't know which voice to listen to, you don't know which voice not to listen to. I am profoundly grateful that I was the one who was able to raise that clarion call, to beg society to listen and to ask for justice for this man, you know.
You see, Mr. Tokeni, it is to tell the truth when you say a fighter will fight even across the seas. You see, it was general fighting through you.
Yes.
And the significance of the dreams.
Yes.
Even though many of us wish to detach from these things, we are who we are because of our culture, traditions, and how we are connected to those who have departed before us.
Yes.
They connect with us in so many ways, including the dreams. Yes. So this was the general fighting, and he is going to continue fighting. That's why when we greet one another, especially Xhosa-speaking persons, they greet one another using clan names, Izituko.
Izituko.
Because when they do that, they acknowledge those that came before the person that they are greeting. When I greet Mr. Dokeni, I know I do not only greet you, I greet those who are responsible for you to be where you are right now. I acknowledge them so that in turn, they protect me too. So you are talking to a fighter here, someone who's even fighting, beyond the clouds, up there in the sky. He is fighting, but he's using so many people, including you. We are very, very grateful that he has connected with people like you. Because some of us, we have limitations in doing these things. Now,
in actual fact, before we proceed, go the parliament, as I'm speaking, messages now start to come,
Okay.
From colleagues, from family members, from a variety of people. But I didn't read everything. I read 2 messages. I read the one was from Malindi, Mrs. Mfazi. Malindi says to me, Sande Teta, Pizzo speaks through you. She says that to Malindi, And Kai Teta Londo, Paya on the table, I remember hitting a fist.
I remember that.
Yeah, you see. And I had at up to that point, there was this fear that sort of was overwhelming me, and
almost restraining yourself.
With parliamentarians there.
You were restraining yourself.
I was restraining myself.
Maybe I cannot cross this line.
Yeah, but
until that
realize
message.
After that moment, these are human beings. Upito would have taken these people on and tell them. Because more than anything is the message that needs to filter through to society. That here is a great injustice that has been done. A terrible injustice. Not only to General Mfazi, but to his family, to his kids. And the profound loss in South Africa, because we will never discover the many great ideas that General Mfazi had for this great nation. We loyal General the country. I am a witness to the battles he fought within the organization. You know, akhondo ebuhlungu njengo ofonela u-10-111 sometimes kungazi. Nobody comes. There are families and members of society who experience that. When you call for help, help must arrive. That was the ultimate promise that the South African Police Service must be. My belly temba labantu, So Ndizamuguti, they have robbed this nation, man, of a great man,
I feel you.
They have a great man, and the people who did this thing, they must pay.
I hear you.
They must pay.
And I understand. Now, tell me, you are mentioning Malindi, the wife to the general. The wife to the general, when you're looking at her, what do you see? And in turn, what do you say to her to make the pain better?
A day after my testimony in Parliament, I think I was 7 exen. Because Napuma late, we left around 11 o'clock. That morning, I called her. She phoned me back. We didn't speak. Dan Carl, as if this burden that she had been carrying it burst open, you know. Nam Lando Nandi Kerisha, it burst open, and we wept for a long time. And we asked Buza Usmalindi. She asks herself, but Sunday, Ninonke, I used to see you when you guys were working with my husband, all of you. And Unyanisile, we used to be there at the residence and we would be working with the general, could be at 12. But when this tragedy befell the family, suddenly abantu babhekela. The colleagues, General Mfazi promoted many people here. He did so much. He saved so many lives. But abantu babhekela. And that was the most painful. She felt left alone. There was only so few people that the family could rely on. And they could not understand this. Nabantwana, I mean, uGugu lethu is a champion, that young man, you know. Because because believe it or not, kwezinye photos zakhe this must be AI, because he looks exactly like his father, you know.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But uGugu lethu experienced his father because he was with him in the Western Cape when he commanded the forces there. He was with him in the Eastern Cape. He was with him throughout. So he knows the level of respect his father commanded. He's seen the people. Now, when they were in need, nobody was there to help them. That was the most painful and the most disappointing. And so that was the basis of what I saw, the pain in Umalindi. That was the pain, because she felt abandoned by Abantu, you know. And I think for any family, you feel most alone, you know, and you realize that, hey, Abantu, really they're not there for you, you know.
I'm told at times Gugu feels the need to protect the family,
Yes.
to be his father.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking Gugu who was excelling even in sport. I remember he went to the States to do trials. I mean, he was playing for a school that is known for rugby. And there was no game that Gugu was not scoring a try or two. Yeah. And this happens. And Gugu becomes less drawn in these activities. What do you say to someone like that? What do you say? Yeah. What do you say to Gugu?
You know, Gugu lethu is someone that, because of the relationship that I had with his father, when I look at Gugu and I remember the man that he was and how affected him, you know, it broke Gugu lethu, you know. It broke Gugu lethu to a great deal. But I am encouraged when I speak to Gugu, you know, because in as much as these people tried to break Gugu, Usmalindi, you know, Bonke, they tried. Because after the wrongness and after he was buried to General Mfazi, they thought that ababantu bayifihlile inyani. And Jema becinga bayifihlile inyani, having hidden the truth, they also thought that they would destroy his legacy, which lives through his children. And as painful as this situation has been for Gugu lethu, you can still see the fire in him. You can see the fire in his eyes.
In
And when
fact,
the time is, yeah, you can see when the time is right, Ugugu
yeah,
will
you're
come
right.
to the fore.
You're right. In fact,
Ugugu will come to the fore. He is his father's son.
Yes, he is. In fact, there's Luto, who is the last born.
Yes.
And Luto, I was very surprised. It's like he is the one who was navigating the path for the mother and the elder brother. He's the one who was saying, my father was a general.
Yes.
We must be strong for him.
Yes.
My father
Yes.
would like to see us fighting for him.
Yes.
The last born saying these things.
Yes.
Luto. I was so surprised. I thought maybe he's the one who was going to be really broken. And he's the one who was pulling everybody.
The Uluto also is very smart, very sharp, just like Ukuku. But you see these personalities ultimately share one common denominator. They have that spirit, you know. In approach, perhaps they may differ there and there. But I've seen these bits and pieces of tech that I used to see in General Mfazi. So I am more than confident that when the time is right, we are going to see amazing and wonderful things for these children. If I can just make one last point on this thing. When people do evil, when people do wrong things, they intend to delete everything about that person, not knowing that they lost even before they started.
You're right.
But they lost even before they started. And I will always be biased in my observation of things because of the relationship I enjoyed with the General Mfazi. You can't take that away from me. But the ability to teach your children not only to be tact when you are around, but also to have the courage, to have the heart, and to have the wisdom, even when you're not around. That is what I'm witnessing, Kwaba
You see,
As painful as everything is, you are starting to see good characters of young men who are going to find themselves and find their voice in society so that they can make a positive impact, as Utata Awabo did. They command a lot of respect already, I'm sure you know Steve, who was a driver to General Mfazi. Steve will narrate many stories about how Luto actually saved him, negotiating from the general,
I know,
because
I know,
our
I
driver
know.
late sometimes, yeah. Late. So Uluto attacked there, he saved Steve many times. And he will even hold Steve, Ati, yabona wena Steve, dukuncedile wena. When he was in
Yeah.
So
No. Yeah.
I'm witnessing responsible young men coming to the fore. And Lando Abezamuyenza to destroy and to bury the name Mfazi will never succeed. It has failed already. It failed before they started. And the attempt or the thought that this would destroy the children, it has not. Rather, it has made them stronger. And I have no doubt that both Luto and Ukuku will become upstanding citizens of South Africa.
Okay. Talking to you as an author now, is there a book in the offering? Because people must read about the general. People must know the general. I'm sure you have enough material.
Oh, definitely. Oh, definitely.
Thank you.
I started writing 5 years ago,
Okay.
The title to the book, Once Everyone is Happy, the best title that we want to put forward is titled Spirit of Resistance.
Mm.
And it embodies the Mfazi legacy.
Wow.
But if there is anything we achieve, if there's anything that we are to achieve out of this, it is to capture and to correct history, to ensure that no false narrative lives beyond our death.
Wow.
That inyaniso izohlala inyaniso. That this man existed, that he fought for the liberation of South Africa, that he bled in the trenches of exile, that he commanded people today who find themselves in high political offices, that he came back and he chose to build the institutions that once oppressed him, so that young men and women like myself can have an opportunity to contribute to society. And that one day the dream of a better society for all can be realized. uJerome Mfazi usebenzile from the days he was young till the last breath that he took. And we dare not fail him.
Wow.
Ilondo bhuti wami. And I really thank everyone for also accepting me when I was speaking in Parliament, because one of the other fears that I had was that because I don't want it to hold me back. I don't want it to be afraid. I don't want it to be, because these dreams are bothering me. This conscience is eating away at me. And I want to be there, and I want to just speak. And I'm so grateful to the family, to all the friends who have accepted that a young man like myself can speak freely and nam deliberated and appeal, so that we speak about this great man called Jerome Mfazi.
Wow. Your parting note, Mr. Dojeni. Look to the people of South Africa, look to the president of the country, look to the minister of police, look to the South Africans and say what you feel you wish to say.
I'm going to say something that we discussed, not Jerome Mfazi, many times, that there was a dream for this country, that a people can come together, regardless of race, of creed, of religious belief. But that dream can only be realized if all of us are prepared to work for it. Honestly so. We bring the little skills we have to develop this beloved South Africa that we all want to live in. Ngalo mazwi, ndicela society to always remember that uJerome Mfazi lived his entire life to help realize that dream. And it is It is upon us to move it forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dojeni. You see, when they banned President O.R. Tambo and branded him a terrorist, when they persecuted everyone who was mentioning his name in South Africa, when they sentenced Rolihlahla Mandela to life imprisonment, when they killed Steve Bantu Biko, when they assassinated Chris Hani, when they did all the bad things they did, including killing General Mfazi, they all had one thing in common, that the history and the people will soon forget about them. But you see, the problem with the universe and the history would always prove the opposite if your intentions are very bad. This is what we see now about General Sindile Mfazi. His killers thought they buried him. We will forget about him. Today, June 2026, we are talking about him. We are going to win, Mr. Tokeni. And on that note, I wish to be one of the people to say, those who participated, engineered, and practically did something that took the life of our general, they're going to be exposed. We're going to see them standing before our courts and answering to all these bad deeds. On that note, let's meet again next week when we bring you another program. From me, Lennox Class, is good night.